Angolans head to the polls on Wednesday in what's expected to be the closest election since the country's first allowed a multi-party vote in 1992. The key question is whether voters will once again pick the left-wing People's Movement for the Liberation of Angola, MPLA, which has been running the country for half a century. It'll be facing off against the centre-right National Union for the Total Independence of Angola, UNITA.
The MPLA is currently led by incumbent President João Lourenço. It derives much of its support from its role in ending Angola's 1975 to 2002 civil war against UNITA. The two anti-colonial guerrilla movements were locked in a struggle following Angola's independence from Portugal in 1975.
Our brothers and sisters in Angola, we are in a world in times where people are supposed to choose who governs them. So we plead to Angolans to vote freely, allow people to express their will. Let us not force our will on the people. And whatever results come out, let's accept them. The tendency not to accept results is a recipe for conflict on the continent. So we plead to Angolans to vote peacefully and accept the outcome.
You must ensure that the strategic nature of Angola, we need peace in Angola, we need unity in Angola, we need cohesion in Angola. I want to make a special plea to all the voters of Angola that vote responsible, but also be responsible to accept the outcome of the will of the people. And that is what democracy is all about.
But high unemployment, corruption and the repression of civil liberties has hit MPLA's popularity. This is even more prevalent among Angola's disillusioned youth, for whom the memory of the civil war may not be as fresh. That desire for change has given Costa Jr., who has helped to tackle corruption and poverty, an opening among younger voters in particular. His UNITA party is leading the United Patriotic Front Opposition Alliance, and polls predict a tight vote. Experts say the MPLA's struggles with younger voters are similar to the issues that other erstwhile liberation parties are grappling with across the continent, including the ANC in South Africa, SWAPO in Namibia and Frelimo in Mozambique. Angola's 27-year civil war was a proxy conflict during the Cold War, with the US and apartheid South Africa backing UNITA, and the Soviet Union and Cuba supporting MPLA. Around 1 million people died in that conflict.
Earlier we spoke to independent consultant Marisa Lourenço, who specializes in political and economic risk in Africa, with a special focus on Angola, Mozambique, South Africa, Zambia and Zimbabwe.
We're most likely to see, I think, the ruling MPLA get a parliamentary majority again. And with that, we're likely to see the main opposition, UNITA, challenge that, which means we might be waiting a while for the final result to come out and that we could see some mass demonstrations and protests. I don't expect to see broad social instability, but definitely pockets of unrest will come with that.
What have you been seeing in the run-up to this in terms of whether it's going to be a level playing field or not?
There are definitely some fresh concerns over transparency in the electoral counting process that were not as acute in previous years. So what happened in November of last year, the MPLA put forward a bill which was then passed in Parliament quite easily because of its parliamentary majority. It's got over 60% of all seats. And what it did was it actually centralized vote counting in Luanda. So in other elections, votes were counted at the provincial level and then they were sent to the National Electoral Commission. This time, all vote counts for all the provinces were actually done in Luanda. And what the concern here that civil society has raised is that this removes a layer of transparency from the overall process.
Young people have been a big question across the continent when it comes to elections. We've just seen in Kenya recently that they didn't show up. What's the situation in Angola?
It's going to be quite interesting because I think that supporters of the main opposition, UNITA, I think that they are definitely feeling that they need to come out and they need to vote. But then on the other hand, the MPLA knows that it also needs to get people out and voting, because if there is wider voter apathy, it has a higher chance of losing. So I think that we're really going to see, you know, these last-minute efforts to get people to vote and to encourage them. I think as well, because the urban youth are sort of facing a lot of socioeconomic grievances, there's very high unemployment, you know, there's limited development. They are definitely feeling a little bit more, perhaps, engaged with the issues at hand and realizing that they do need to vote to change things. It's going to be a bit tricky to get the final vote count at the end of it all. Like I said, removing that layer of transparency does open the way for some potential manipulation. But I think that we can see, you know, people wanting to change Angola, or alternatively, if they support the MPLA, knowing that they need to come out and vote to keep it in power.